It was all one big black hole.
From city to city.
Dallas, Houston, Los Angeles, Skid Row, back to Salt Lake City.
From street to street.
It just went downhill.
An addict with a death wish.
I just found myself in that dark spot, wanting to commit suicide.
Finds a reason to live.
Maybe there was hope for me.
Plus, from the Potter's house to our house, Serita and Sarah Jakes join us live on today's 700 Club.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this edition of the 700 Club. Delighted to have you with us. We've got some things today you will not see in the news, but you'll see it on this news because we want to bring you the truth. First of all, the wonderful Muslim Brotherhood. I understand Senator McCain is going to meet with the Brotherhood. They had secret torture chambers in Egypt when Mohamed Morsi was president. And we'll have the shocking details for you on this program today.
Last spring, we heard that members of the Muslim Brotherhood had tortured Christian demonstrators at a mosque in Cairo. Now, more Egyptians are coming forward with their stories of abuse. Here's our Gary Lane.
The torture allegations come of no surprise to Egyptians like these demonstrators, brutally beaten by pro-Morsi Islamists. Also not shocked, CBN News contributor Raymond Ibrahim. He says many Islamists believe it's okay to torture an adversary.
And it all comes down to, what is your intention? Is your intention to empower Islam? And if it is, then you are exonerated. The idea of actually, using terror once again via torture in order to support this sort of Islamist agenda has been going on for a very long time.
The El Nadim Center for Rehabilitation of Victims of Violence recorded 359 torture cases during President Morsi's 1 year in office. That compares to 357 during the last 10 years of Hosni Mubarak's rule. Arresting and prosecuting the abusers may not be a top priority of the interim government at this time. Both the Egyptian cabinet and the National Defense Council have called on pro-Morsi demonstrators to disband their Cairo sit-ins. Egypt's foreign minister says it's clear reconciliation cannot take place until the incitement to violence ends.
Egyptians are adamant about restoring their normal life and that the insecurity that exists cannot continue long term. But there is no desire to use force if there is any other avenue that can be, has any potential for success.
Pro-Morsi supporters and other Islamists still blame Christians for the ouster of the Muslim Brotherhood leader from the Egyptian presidency. Attacks against Christians, especially in Upper Egypt, continue. CBN News has received reports of fresh attacks that occurred Saturday, August 3rd. Militant Muslims attacked homes and businesses in 3 Christian villages near Al-Minya. Rioting Islamists planted a black Al-Qaeda flag at a Coptic Orthodox church in Sohag. Egyptian Christians want Washington to pressure the interim government to do more to protect them. While most Egyptians say they love Americans, they have little love or respect for President Obama and U.S. Ambassador to Egypt, Ann Patterson.
There's this feel that's, very hostile to the American administration because they see them, rightfully so, as very biased towards the Brotherhood and, the Muslim Brotherhood and the Islamists in general, because this administration's actions, especially in the person of the hated Ann Patterson. So it's really interesting to see how this will develop on a diplomatic front.
Secretary of State John Kerry has suggested President Obama appoint U.S. Ambassador to Syria Robert Ford as the new Egyptian ambassador. But already Egyptians are critical, alleging that Ford will bring civil war to Egypt just as he did with Syria. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Boy, the chickens are coming home to roost in terms of some of the Obama mistakes. But, ladies and gentlemen, the Muslim Brotherhood is bad news. It is bad news. And again, for John McCain to go over and say, well, let me negotiate with the Brotherhood. You're not going to negotiate with fanatics who say Muhammad is our leader. The Quran is our constitution. Jihad is our way. I mean, they want to establish a Muslim caliphate. That's what they try to do, and they'll do it with jihad. And why do we think we're going to sit down at a meeting and talk them out of it? Not a chance. Well, the military and the FBI and other branches of government have been told you must be politically correct. You cannot offend Muslims. So a lawsuit is coming about that might take the veil off of some of this nonsense that's been going on. And the question is, did the military's political correctness play a role in the shootings at Fort Hood? Well, Lee Webb has more on that story from the CBN newsroom. Here's Lee.
Pat, the Army major responsible for the Fort Hood massacre says he did it for Islam. Nidal Hasan is acting as his own attorney in the trial, which began yesterday. Now some of his victims are suing the U.S. government, and they claim the military's political correctness allowed the massacre to happen. Here's Charlene Israel.
Witnesses say Army psychiatrist Nidal Hasan opened fire at Fort Hood nearly 4 years ago. He's accused of killing 13 people and wounding more than 30 others. Now on trial, he denies none of that. In a brief opening statement Monday, he said, quote, "The evidence will clearly show that I am the shooter." Hasan called himself a mujahideen, or a Muslim holy warrior.
He further stated he realized during the war that he eventually found himself on the wrong side and switched sides, considering himself a mujahideen.
He then told the jury, quote, "We mujahideens are imperfect Muslims trying to establish a perfect religion. I apologize for any mistakes that I made in this endeavor."
This is just cold-blooded massacre. And if you believe in capital punishment and you don't vote for the death penalty in this case, then I don't know what case you would vote for it.
Meanwhile, as Hasan proudly admits to carrying out the attack, survivors of the massacre remain furious. A group of 148 victims and their families are suing the U.S. government for essentially allowing the attack to happen. Their lawyer told British newspaper The Sunday Telegraph, quote, "Because of where he came from and how he prayed to his God, they promoted him and set him loose and ignored his very open, very obvious jihadism." 2 years before the attack, Hasan told a crowd of medical college students that the U.S. was waging war on Islam. In another incident, the FBI spotted email exchanges between Hasan and top al-Qaeda terrorist Anwar al-Awlaki. Still, Hasan was left untroubled by military authorities. The victims say it's time for the military to meet its responsibilities to those harmed by its negligence. Charlene Israel, CBN News.
The Justice Department has filed criminal charges now in the deadly terror attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi. Ambassador Chris Stevens and 3 other Americans died September 11th of last year. The criminal complaint lists an unspecified number of suspects. One official tells the Associated Press it includes Ahmed Abu Khattala. He's the head of a Libyan militia group and admits being at the compound that night. Republican Congressman Darrell Issa says criminal charges are not enough in this case. He says, Pat, that the attacker should be apprehended immediately.
I can't believe it. There's a thing that goes on in Libya. It's part of a war, and we're going to bring them to some court in New York and do a trial where they can interview witnesses and have the protection of the United States Constitution. It makes no sense at all. It's a war. These guys are warriors. They're trying to kill us. They killed our people. They said they had a warrant out against Osama bin Laden. We finally got out there and killed him, but we certainly didn't do it by the Justice Department sending a few FBI agents to arrest him. This whole thing is ridiculous, but that's part of political correctness. We can't call this a war on terror. We can't call these people extremists. We can't say they're Muslim extremists. We cannot say because of the teaching of the Quran, these people want to go out and kill us. We can't identify that. And as I've said before, and I say it again, wouldn't it have been horrible during World War II if we were forbidden to say Nazis were bad people and that Adolf Hitler wanted to destroy us, and it was all written out in Mein Kampf? Wouldn't it have been terrible during that war if we were unable to mobilize against an enemy? Well, we've got an enemy, and the enemy wants to destroy our way of life, our civilization. Here's Lee.
Pat, a key security function in Obamacare is months behind schedule, and the new law is set to go into effect in less than 2 months. When Americans begin enrolling in health insurance exchanges October 1st, their identity, income, and other sensitive information will be funneled through a federal data hub. But Reuters reports the safety of this technology has not been tested properly because of the many missed deadlines. Tests to certify the security of the system have been pushed back now to September 30th. That's just one day before enrollment begins. And an unsafe system could be open to fraud and identity theft. Former President George W. Bush is expected to leave a Dallas hospital today. Doctors placed a stent in his heart yesterday after discovering a blockage in an artery during his annual physical. A stent is a tiny mesh device that props open clogged arteries. About 500,000 Americans have them inserted each year. Mr. Bush is said to be in good spirits, though, and expected to resume his normal schedule later this week. Childhood obesity is on the decline in this country. Health officials say there's a decrease in at least 18 states, but they warn that rates are still way too high. 1 in 8 preschoolers in the U.S. is obese. They're 5 times more likely than other children to be heavy as adults. That means a greater risk of high cholesterol, high blood sugar, asthma, and even mental health problems. Pat?
Thank you. Well, Mayor Bloomberg is probably rejoicing. It's because they're not drinking supersized Cokes.
I thought they were still appealing that.
Well, maybe it's not working. This other reduction is from something else. Maybe parents are getting intelligent. You know, when a little kid can't eat anything that their parents don't give them.
That's true.
They can't do it. It's not available.
But they use sugary stuff to bribe them.
I know, but if you've got sugary cereal, just read the labels on those cereals that they give them. Well, they've got to have sugar so they won't eat the cereals. Nonsense.
The other thing is, Pat, they're sitting on their computers and their iPods and their Kindles, and they're not getting outside and playing like we used to. You know?
Push a button. All right, Johnny. Exercise time. We're going to go toss a football, but it means that dads and moms have got to get up with them, you know. I used to sing a song, don't send your kids to Sunday school, get out of bed and take them. Well, I think don't send your children to the playground, get out of bed and play with them. But, all right, well,
easier said than done.
Anyhow, the trend apparently is a little more encouraging, but not a great deal. All right, what's next?
Well, still ahead, the First Lady of the Potter's House, Serita Jakes, joins us, along with her daughter, Sarah. Find out how their stories of personal heartbreak are helping to heal thousands of women. But first, he was a rising star in a political party of anti-Semites until he had a shocking conversation with his 94-year-old grandmother. Hear what she told him when we come back.
I'm Cecil Gaines. I'm the new butler.
A father bound by duty.
I want to hear all the stories.
I don't know how many stories you're going to hear because it's for him to some kind of secret code.
A son fighting for change.
There's this black power movement. I gave him the green light to gut those people.
This country treats us like dogs.
They're going to kill you.
A mother protecting her family.
Get the hell out of here. I'm sorry, Mr. Butler. I didn't mean to make fun of your hero.
Everything you have is because of that butler.
Lee Daniels, The Butler. Rated PG-13, August 16th.
Thursday.
Someone with a badge has a lot of power.
A crooked cop goes on the run for 22 years.
I can just run and stay in the woods and nobody would ever find me.
Plus,
remember seeing the car come through my windshield?
2 drivers trapped.
The steering wheel was stuck in my chest. I couldn't move.
And 2 supernatural rescues.
I saw these hands reach past me where there was no room.
Thursday.
We hear about these strange things from time to time, people who think there's somebody else, and they've even got a show on that, You Know Who You Are. You go back and find it, oh, I didn't know I was kin to him. I remember Jimmy Carter said, well, my family's from Virginia. One of them was hanged for being a horse thief. So you just never know who you come from. But imagine one day, out of the blue, you find out that you're not the person you thought you were. And in fact, you're the very thing that you hate. Well, that's exactly what happened to one man in Budapest. Dale Herb has this remarkable story of this man's crisis.
He was once a rising star in one of Hungary's largest and most controversial political parties, Jobbik. Jobbik has been labeled fascist and anti-Semitic. Csinád Szegedy, still in his 20s, was on a trajectory to lead this party someday.
I joined Jobbik in 2003 when the party foundations were being built. I was a member for 9 years. I was vice president for 6 years and in the European Parliament since 2009.
Szegedy has also been branded an anti-Semite, although in our interview he disagreed.
When I entered Jobbik, I was kind of indifferent toward Jews. I didn't care about Jews. I didn't care about the Holocaust. I didn't consider the Holocaust as a tragedy for the Hungarian people. I read a lot of anti-Semitic literature.
Still, Szegedy was a leader of a party almost universally labeled anti-Semitic, and his public statements showed that at the very least, he still didn't like Jews and was suspicious of them. But that would all change when Csinád Szegedy would learn something about himself that turned his world upside down. Csinád Szegedy was a Jew. Rumors had begun swirling on the internet that Szegedy had Jewish roots, so he went to talk with his 94-year-old grandmother, who had never said she was Jewish.
And she opened up and she talked about her life and how she was sent to Auschwitz and how our whole family was annihilated.
How did this change your view of the Holocaust?
I was shocked. First of all, because I realized the Holocaust really happened.
Not sure what he should do next, he first tried to hide his Jewishness and act like nothing had happened, but eventually realized he could not stay in Jobbik.
I realized I can't take part in any organization that has anything to do with anti-Semitism. And after my Jewish origins were disclosed, they really didn't want to see me in the party.
So what do you do when you discover that you are one of the very things that you hated? For Csinád Szegedy, you change. Szegedy contacted local rabbi Shlomo Koves, who first thought it was a joke.
When we met first with Csinád, I had a very mixed feelings because from one hand, I was sitting across somebody that was seen for years as one of the main figures of the Jobbik party. From the other hand, I was sitting across a broken person who has realized what he has done and who has become to a situation where he figured he has to change, but he still doesn't know how to change.
Csinád started attending synagogue and admits that at first some members treated him like a leper.
It was very interesting to see how other people look at it, and on one hand they took a step back and they were shocked.
And would literally leave the synagogue when he walked in. But some befriended him and he started taking classes at the synagogue, learning Hebrew and the meaning of kosher and Shabbat. How much of your life has changed since you learned that you're a Jew?
It's changed everything. It's like being reborn, and the changes in my life are still happening. I had this value system until I was 30, and I had to admit that it was all wrong and had to find the will to change.
He also became a politician without a party, but has continued to serve in the European Parliament as an independent.
As a politician, I now want to defend human rights for everyone. I am aware of my responsibility, and I know I will have to make it right in the future.
One of the high points of his new life was traveling this year to Israel with his wife and visiting the Holocaust Museum and the Wailing Wall.
When I landed in Israel, airport security asked me a lot of questions. And when the guard asked me, "Are you a Jew?" then for the first time in my life, I could say yes.
What has it been like learning how to be Jewish?
Just to feel like you're on the right way spiritually and you can get closer to God, it's a whole new feeling for me that I'm doing the right thing. My life has been full of incredible miracles, but I believe everyone who chooses the way of God sees miracles.
Dale heard CBN News in Budapest, Hungary.
What an amazing story. There were some really horrible things during the Holocaust in Hungary. The Jews were quite a large population. They were rounded up and slaughtered, shipped out to Auschwitz and Buchenwald and those other places. It's terrible.
Goodness, for his 94-year-old grandmother.
Isn't that amazing?
Isn't it amazing, though? It never came up.
Yeah.
She never talked about it. I guess it was sort of taboo. I mean, maybe she just wanted to forget about it.
Grandmother let that happen, but I guess she just didn't want to. She probably realized what pain he would encounter.
Yeah.
You know, when I was over there in the East Bloc countries, I could not believe the level of anti-Semitism. The Jews are almost have been wiped out in countries like Romania. I mean, maybe a few thousand out of the whole population, and yet there's virulent anti-Semitism. I don't understand it, but it's still there. It's very pervasive.
And I don't understand how people can say the Holocaust never happened. Like he said, "Oh, I realized the Holocaust really happened." You know?
Well, that's the pervading line. No, it didn't happen. It's just a Jewish myth. Well, that's not true, and it's we just want to make sure that never happens again.
Yeah, incredible.
Well, you've got some more good news on the 700 Club. You're watching the 700 Club, and here's Wendy.
Indeed, coming up, a professional cyclist with a racing drug addiction.
Outside of Phoenix, Arizona, it was supposed to be a premier event for not just racing, but for sponsors, and I didn't even show up. Riding bike and doing heroin just didn't mix too well.
See how this former athlete survived 5 years of living on the streets.
Is your child happy in school? Is the pace too fast or too slow? Does your child need a more flexible or individualized approach? You do have another choice. Online learning from K-12, a full-time alternative to the traditional classroom, available as a tuition-free public school option. Call now for your free information kit to learn more. K-12 is available through accredited public schools that parents and teachers enthusiastically endorse.
I made a switch to online learning because I saw a blossoming of kids' excitement for education.
Our state-certified teachers customize lesson plans and guide learning. Kids work at the level and pace just right for them without classroom distractions, and books and supplies are included.
The ability to have the online school and still be part of a public school system is priceless.
In fact, 97% of K-12 parents are satisfied their student benefits academically. Call now or go online for your free information kit.
In 2008, my husband Gary departed for heaven. I was still grieving. And then to find out I had cancer, I began praying, God, how do I do this? Where do I do this? Cancer Treatment Centers of America was the place. Dr. Neelam outlined a plan that would take care of my mind and my body, and she prayed with me.
For Bible-believing Christians, we're able to pray with them in a much deeper way as they begin to really rely upon their faith.
At Cancer Treatment Centers of America, we believe in the power of faith and prayer as indispensable allies in the fight against complex and advanced stage cancer.
I'm back in Telluride on the mountain skiing. I feel strong and healthy.
Advanced medicine and technology.
And I am a survivor.
The warm embrace of the spirit and the power of prayer.
These are happy tears.
Please go to cancercenter.com/faith. Appointments available now. Cancer Treatment Centers of America. Care that never quits.
To see this week's most viewed stories, go to CBN.com.
Some athletes have a wonderful future in front of them, and Scott Sowle was one of them. He had a huge future in front of him as a professional cyclist until the day he failed to show up for a race. Why? He could no longer hide his runaway drug addiction. And from that day forward, he couldn't even ride a bike.
It just went downhill. I started living on the streets in Dallas. I lived in the streets of Houston. I went from there to Los Angeles in downtown and lived in Skid Row there, and then back to Salt Lake City.
But life wasn't always like this for Scott Sowle. At one point, he was rising in the ranks as a professional cyclist.
I started winning. So I thought I could just go out and start celebrating. And it just went from one celebration to sitting in a bar and starting to use drugs all the time. I couldn't even get back on a bike. I mean, I would try, but riding bike and doing heroin just didn't mix too well. Outside of Phoenix, Arizona, it was supposed to be a premier event for not just racing, but for sponsors. And I didn't even show up. I never would be able to get another sponsor after that. It was all one big black hole.
Scott began living on the streets, moving from city to city, struggling with his drug addiction. But at a university library, he found he had a surprising talent.
Many of the homeless would go to universities, whether it's the library or whether it's computers, but I was able to learn how to web design by tearing down websites and rebuilding them. They started allowing me to come in and set in classes. As time progressed and I was getting better and I was making money, they couldn't understand why I was still out on the streets. And I wouldn't tell them that I was having a drug problem. I'd figure out a way to hide it all the time. I had hooked up with an individual who had an eBay store, and I started helping them out to grow the business, and I started making money. Just put me in a comfortable spot of saying, I'm succeeding again, I can go celebrate again.
But Scott's new success couldn't pull him out of his drug addiction.
It took me like 3 or 4 days to go through a paycheck, and I just found myself in that dark spot, the thoughts of wanting to commit suicide if I didn't find some help. There was a community group that met on a Tuesday night, and I just walked in, and they all put their arms around me and loved me.
The next morning, Scott was admitted into a recovery program. He got clean, but was still dealing with his past.
The first 30 days, you're in a blackout period, so you have no contact as far as email or phone or anything of the sort. So I was up late at night. Normally, all your caseworkers are gone. When I saw the light, I said, okay, yeah, I'm okay. So I walked in and I sat down and told my caseworker what was going on in my life. And Tuan gave me a story in Genesis about Joseph and asked me to read it. And it was kind of interesting, you know, I sat down and read it that night. I read it the next day. The thing that really struck me was Joseph's brothers committed so many sins against him, yet he was still able to forgive them. And I could relate to that part of being those brothers because I have committed so many sins in my life. And I was just like, wow, if Joseph can forgive his brothers for doing what they had done, maybe there was hope for me. And that was the moment that I actually got on my knees in the Union Gospel Mission and give my life to Christ. Every morning, early in the morning, I would wake up and go to the workout room. I knew there was nobody else within the room, but I was just sitting there and just clearly recognizing God. When an arm reached around me and grabbed a hold of my shoulder and just squeezed it. Whew. It sends chills down me right now. This hug just came. And then it wasn't words, it was a whisper of a wind that was, I love you. And I knew at that moment that that was his presence there. And it was something I needed. And it's something that we all need, is to understand he loves us all the time and not just part of the time.
Scott finally had found the peace he longed for, but now he needed a purpose. He found inspiration from his time on the streets.
About 5 years before I came here to Seattle, I was living on the streets. I needed a pair of work boots to be able to go to work. I had a temporary job. After 30 days of asking, an individual from one of the organizations came to me, and she had tears in her eyes as she was explaining this. She said, we get clothing, we get food, we get blankets, we get hygiene kits, but we just never get footwear. Most people don't understand it, but when you're on the street, there's times that you may not be out of your shoes for literally days. It was something that stuck with me.
In 2010, Scott started the nonprofit Redeeming Souls. His mission now is to use footwear to share the gospel.
And as of today, we've done over 50,000 pairs of shoes. And it's not so much the footwear for me. I mean, that's just an avenue to have them ask me a question, how did your life change? And once they ask that, the big, huge smile comes across my face and just go like, God, that he does care, and he cares about us all, and always does, and always will. Give him a chance.
He cares about you. The Bible says, cast all your cares upon him because he cares for you. It's so hard to believe that God cares for you. You know, you've done terrible things. We've all done terrible things. We've done things we're ashamed of. You know, you can go back through your life and you see the stuff that you've done, people you've hurt, lives that maybe have been damaged because of you, and what you've done to yourself, how you've disobeyed God. And God says, do you understand? I'm going to forgive you all that. I'm literally going to forgive it all if you will come to me and let me take you and clean you up and make you the person I want you to be. It's so simple. That's why it's called good news. It isn't something you need a theological degree to figure out. It isn't something where you have to go to school and study. It is a relationship with the one who created you, who's reaching out to you right now, and he says, I love you, child. Yes, you've been unfaithful. Yes, you've committed adultery, or you've been sexually active when you shouldn't have been. Yes, you've stolen something that didn't belong to you. Yes, you've done all these things. But I affirm one thing, that I love you, and I will forgive you all that if you'll just come to me and let me make you the person I want you to be. I'll give you a life that you can't believe, joy unspeakable and full of glory. So right now, if you want it, I'm here for the purpose right at this moment of giving you an invitation. You can be part of the kingdom of God. If you want that, just bow your head. Don't go anywhere. Just bow your head right now. Pray these simple words. Jesus, I know you died for me, Lord. And Jesus, I know that you rose from the dead that I might live. And so, Lord, right now, I come to you and I say, take me just as I am. Take me, Lord, and make me part of your kingdom. I receive you as Savior and make you Lord of my life. Thank you. From this moment on, Jesus, I'm yours. Thank you. Now I want to pray for you. If you prayed with me, pray for you right now. Father, for those who prayed, let the power of God come into their lives in the name of Jesus. Touch them. Amen. If you prayed that prayer, I want to help you, get you started. I have something. We've had it around for a while, but it's got some powerful truth in it. There's about 73 minutes of very concentrated teaching about what you've just done. A little compact disc, you can put it in your CD player and listen to it in your car or wherever you are. We'll give this to you free. Just go to your phone, call in and say, listen, I prayed with Pat, I gave my heart to the Lord. A new day. There's a toll-free number. It's easy to remember. It's 1-800, that's the toll-free number. 759-0700. That's easy to remember. 759-0700. Call right now, toll-free, won't cost you anything. Nobody's looking for any money from you. All I want you to do is to call, and I want to give you something. So, call. And the angels of heaven are rejoicing because of what you just did. Well, you've heard about the Potter's House, this extraordinary church, and a guy named T.D. Jakes. He's an African-American preacher who is something else. He really is something. Well, he also has a very lovely lady and a very lovely daughter. And Wendy's going to introduce them to us to find out what the other side of the Jakes family has going on for them. Wendy.
I sure am, Pat. Coming up, First Lady Jakes and her daughter join us. Serita and Sarah talk about taking over downtown Dallas with their upcoming MegaFest. They'll tell you all about it later on today's 700 Club.
And I realized God was saying, look, you can keep doing this your way or you can do it my way. Your way, you got what you got. My way, I can work this out in such a way that it will astonish you. And so I remember saying, look, here's what's left of my life. You can have it. You can trust the Lord and He will do His work in your life, and you will be so glad that He did.
Did your magic phone service promise you everything but come up empty? Sign up for Basic Talk. Unlimited calling for only $9.99 a month with no annual contract. It's a home phone service you can count on. It's not magic, it's Basic Talk. Call, click, or go to Walmart today.
Welcome back to the 700 Club. President Obama has canceled his upcoming summit meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. That decision reflects U.S. anger over Russia harboring Edward Snowden. He, of course, is the man who leaked information about the National Security Agency's electronic surveillance program. The White House, though, is also frustrated with Moscow's positions on other key issues like missile defense and human rights. The president will still attend the economic summit of 20 nations in St. Petersburg, Russia. Samuel Lamb, a hero of the Christian faith for millions of believers inside and outside of China, passed away on August 3rd at the age of 88. Lamb was arrested for his Christian faith during one of the first waves of persecution in Mao's China in the 1950s. He spent 20 years in Chinese labor camps. After his release, Lamb formed a house church and became one of the most influential leaders of China's underground church movement. He liked to talk about what he called the holy principle: more persecution, more growth. You can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com. Pat and Wendy will be back with more of the 700 Club after this.
Jack and I are having the time of our lives. The kids are on their own, and now we're back in control of our time and the way we spend our money.
That's why Consumer Cellular is the perfect cell phone company for us. We get great service, and compared to our old plan, we're saving a ton every month.
Consumer Cellular is the wireless provider for people who want affordable service without the contracts.
Listen, I don't think I'm cheap. I only
want to pay for what I need.
So what do you pay a month for Consumer Cellular? My bill can be as low as $10, $15 a month. Wow.
But we can change our plan anytime. So even those months we use it a lot, we're always getting the best price.
Try Consumer Cellular risk-free for 30 days with free activation, a $35 value, and free shipping. Consumer Cellular is the exclusive wireless provider for AARP members. Ask about your special discounts.
Call Consumer Cellular at 1-800-730-5103. Go online to consumercellulartv.com or visit a Sears store today.
Thursday.
Someone with a badge has a lot of power.
A crooked cop goes on the run for 22 years.
I can just run and stay in the woods and nobody would ever find me.
Plus,
remember seeing the car come through my windshield.
2 drivers trapped.
The steering wheel was stuck in my chest. I couldn't move.
And 2 supernatural rescues.
I saw these hands reach past me where there was no room.
Thursday.
Welcome back. Well, she's affectionately known as First Lady Jakes, and she's been married to Bishop T.D. Jakes for nearly 30 years. But Serita Jakes and her daughter Sarah have quite a story of their own. Take a look.
Bishop T.D. Jakes has been a powerhouse in promoting the gospel since 1979. But he's not the only one in his family reaching people with a message of hope. Serita Jakes struggled with her own self-worth, but her faith in God and the love of her husband helped heal her heart. Serita has ministered to thousands of women and has served alongside her husband for many years. Today, Serita and her daughter Sarah offer encouragement for hurting women who want to be free from pain and suffering.
And please welcome back to the 700 Club, Serita and Sarah Jakes.
Thank you.
Welcome, ladies. See ya. Serita, you're a West Virginia girl like me. I'm from Charleston. You were born and raised in Beckley, just about an hour away.
Absolutely,
and
absolutely.
I did not know you were a coal miner's daughter.
I was proud to be a coal miner's daughter. And it's amazing because I think Bishop was a janitor's son. So we've got the coal miner's daughter and the janitor's son doing international ministry. God is amazing.
He's amazing.
Yes,
very
he is.
humble beginnings.
Very, very.
During your teenage years, though,
Yes.
you went through a lot of heartache. A lot of people don't know
Yes.
your story, but your brother, your very own beloved brother, was murdered.
Yes, absolutely. I was in college, actually, and they came and got me. My other brother came and got me. He said, we need to go home because Ricky's been shot. And I thought, okay, he was shot.
Right.
I didn't know that it was fatal until I got home and I saw my mother's face and I realized that he was gone. And it was the most horrific moment, I believe, in my life.
And Serita, that grief led you into the arms of a boyfriend who wasn't very good for you.
No, not at all. But at the time, he was a person that I thought would help me reap vengeance, which is not a good thing, but I wasn't born again.
Sure.
But, you know, and so I thought that this would kind of be a catalyst for me to just kind of actually get back to my brother's killer and, you know, but it wasn't good for me. He became increasingly violent toward me. And so God rescued me, took me back home to my mommy, and the rest was smooth sailing from that point on.
Eventually you ended up going to church, and eventually you ended up meeting a young man that we now know as the Bishop.
As the Bishop.
How did you guys meet?
Well, you know, I feel like a stalker, but we started doing secret pal cards. And
secret pal cards?
You go to the Hallmark store, they even have them now, and it's like I would just sign it, and it's from a secret admirer, and I was encouraging him in ministry.
Oh.
And then finally, my pastor's wife introduced me to him. And he said, do you know where a single man could get a home-cooked meal? I said, I'll have to ask my mom because I totally couldn't cook. And so he came to eat dinner, and then we started dating.
Does he know that you were the secret pal now?
He does. He does. I'm still the secret pal, okay? Okay. Yeah,
now,
always.
Sarah, let's talk about you. You are 24, but when I first met you this morning, I thought you were like 17. You look so young. But what's amazing about you, Sarah, is you've been through a lot of heartache for your young age. You had a baby out of wedlock at 14.
I did.
What was that like?
Wow. Well, I think certainly being Bishop Jakes' daughter made it a lot more intense than maybe someone who didn't have to do it in front of 30,000 church family members. But I think ultimately in all of my different heartbreaks, like all women and people go through, that I learned a valuable lesson about who I am, what I'm capable of surviving, and that grace can find us no matter where we are.
Absolutely.
And the baby?
Yeah.
Did you keep the baby?
Oh, of course, yeah. My son, he's 10 now. I also have a daughter, she's 3. And it's so funny because, you know, when you have a son at a young age, a lot of people, you know, you never know how your child will turn out, and you're still growing up yourself. But God has really blessed me. He's a wonderful young man and on fire for God.
Amazing. And you also went through a divorce. That had to be heartbreaking. Both of you meet so many women now as part of the Potter's House. And heartbreak is everywhere, isn't it?
Yes.
What do you tell women when you minister to them? What kind of message do you have for them, Serita?
Well, one of the things that I realized that once you've been called and you've been chosen, that you go through a lot of difficult times, but it's not just for you, it's for the people that you lead. And so leaders go first through a lot of things. And so I'll be able to tell them, I know what it's to be abased or abound, but I've learned to be content no matter what state I found myself in, because I knew that Christ was ultimately in charge of my life. And I get to share with them from the meager beginnings of no lights, no water, you know, no food, no clothes, no shoes, you know, and then I get to share with them, but God, but God ultimately had a plan for our lives. And people that knew the coal miner's daughter can't believe where we are now, but people that see where we are now can't believe that there was such an humble beginning.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, God says, do not despise the day of small beginnings.
He says it, and it's true.
It's so
and
true.
He also reminds us that our steps have been ordered by Him.
Well, let's talk about MegaFest. You all are getting ready to take over downtown Dallas with MegaFest later this month. What's it all about?
Well, Sarah?
I think we're trying to bring all of the family together. It's the perfect time. We're kind of closing out summer, which we had a lot of time, and I've spent lots of time with my children and my kiddos. And I think before we start even going into the school year and the new year, that God would just consecrate our lives, our children's lives, and just bring us back together. We're calling it Together Again.
Yes.
And so they're going to trust Mom and I to do some girl talk, because we get to like cut up and have a lot of fun. But I think the most important message of MegaFest is to take that feeling that we have when we're surrounded by thousands of believers, that strength that we gain there, take it into our communities and our homes first, and really let the good news spread.
And it's so amazing because we'll have Manpower, the conference for men.
Right.
We'll have Woman Thou Art Loose for women. We've got Mega Youth for kids 13 to 17. We've got Mega Kids.
Yeah.
And so we'll have bounce houses, we'll have empowerment seminars, and for the first time, we're having an international film festival, because you know, as the faith-based community is going into all of the world.
Yeah.
Okay, we're taking over Broadway, we're taking over television, as was proved with the Bible series, and then with films. And we have increased the viewership of family like PG-13.
I just saw your husband in Jumping the Broom. I know that's been out for a while, but I just got a chance to watch it. It was on TV.
Yes.
It was fantastic.
Yes, and even during the film festival, we'll be doing the Black Nativity with Angela Bassett and Jennifer Hudson, Forrest Whitaker. We're going to do Winnie.
Joel and Victoria Osteen will be there.
Joel and Victoria Osteen will be there.
The Women
Women of Purpose concert.
Real quick,
with
how can people get
autism.
involved? How can they?
1-800-BISHOP-2.
Or mega-fest.com.
Okay. Ladies, I wish we had more time. It's
I do
been a
too,
pleasure.
Wendy.
Had to come back.
Absolutely.
I'm by myself.
Absolutely. Well, for more information on the upcoming Potter's House MegaFest, you can log on to CBN.com. And don't forget the date. That's August 29th through 31st in Dallas.
Yes.
And if you can't get enough of Serita and Sarah, and who can, there's more. We have a web exclusive interview with them. Just go to CBN.com and click on the In the Green Room link, and you'll see a cuter, funnier side even than what you saw right here. So we'll be back. Pat?
Very interesting. You know, Bishop Jakes is extraordinary. We had a big tent meeting up here, and I'm telling you, the people just thronged to hear him. And he was so dynamic. And I had the joy of speaking at the dedication of the Potter's House down there in Dallas. It's a marvelous church, and T.D. Jakes, a dear friend, a great guy. Well, coming up next, we'll be taking your email questions. One of our viewers says, I am 18 years old and have recently faced the following issues socially. What does the Bible have to say about interracial marriages? We'll bring it on with this question and more when we come back.
If you're living with diabetes and have Medicare or private insurance, here is some great news. Call United States Medical Supply today, and we'll send you the smallest glucose meter in the world, absolutely free.
It only takes a speck of blood, and it gives me my results in 5 seconds.
And there's no coding for easier, more accurate results.
Don't let diabetes get in the way of living. Give us a call today at United States Medical Supply and get the smallest meter in the world for free.
If you've been thinking about financial options for your retirement, maybe how to provide some real security for you and your family, you really ought to consider a reverse mortgage with AAG. In uncertain times, it's a safe, effective financial tool. It's already being used by hundreds of thousands of other Americans. It allows you to eliminate monthly mortgage payments, pay some bills, or simply enjoy your retirement more. A government-insured reverse mortgage with AAG allows seniors to stay in their home and turn their equity into tax-free cash. To qualify, there are no credit score requirements, and remember, you continue to retain complete ownership of your home.
Call 1-800-791-3782 to receive a new special edition handbook featuring reverse mortgage borrowers, plus an educational brochure and DVD presented by Fred Thompson, absolutely free.
Find out more. Call AAG today.
Call 1-800-791-3782 now.
Welcome back to the 700 Club. It is time to bring it on, Pat. Are you ready?
Well, I'll let you know after you ask the question.
Yes, sir.
All right, what do we got?
This viewer says, I'm 18 and have recently faced the following issues socially. What does the Bible have to say about interracial marriages? I know the Bible says that God looks at man's heart, not his outward appearance. However, my family has been against interracial marriages because of the problems it can cause for young children. Today, it seems to be easily accepted.
Well, the Bible is very clear about being unequally yoked with unbelievers. God's interested in the heart, not the color of somebody's skin, whether it's a yellow person, red person, black person, white person. That's not the issue. The issue is what's in the heart. And the Bible is very express about don't be unequally yoked with unbelievers. But in terms of interracial, what your parents have said, it is a problem, interracial children. It gets to be a difficult thing. Here in Virginia, a few years ago, there used to be a law called miscegenation. And I remember a girl I'd gone to school with years ago in high school or something. She came back and was married to a very prominent Chinese. And she actually was breaking the law of Virginia because they had a miscegenation. You couldn't get married to somebody of another race. All those laws are gone now. And there are all kinds of marriages of various groups, and that's just the way it is. But it has been difficult for the children of some of those unions. But that has to do with a cultural thing, not biblical. Biblical has to do with the religious beliefs and the heart of people, not their skin color.
All right, Pat, Michelle writes, I heard a preacher say that there are different types of giving, tithing, giving, and two other types that I can't recall. He said that if you don't tithe and do other giving, you won't be as blessed. Can you explain this? And when you tithe, where are you supposed to give your tithe? Is giving to CBN considered a tithe? Great question.
You know, I have such a hard time explaining the musings of some of these preachers who may or may not be right. And I don't know everything they've said, so I'm supposed to comment on it. Listen, again, God looks at your heart. God loves a cheerful giver. And we give out of the abundance of blessing, and we give it to the Lord cheerfully, not under compulsion, but cheerfully. And he says that he who provides seed to the sower will also bless what you do. Now, yes, there are various types of tithes, and then there are offerings, and there's various types of offerings along the way unto the Lord. But to get all legalistic, everybody's got to get so legalistic. No. But in terms of the tithe, I think that I had a young lady working with me on this program who was absolutely adamant that tithe belongs to the church. That was taught by her preacher, because it's to their advantage to teach their people to give to the church, because that means it comes to them or their organization. I think the tithes should go into the kingdom of God. Their missionary works, their hospital, humanitarian works, their charities that feed the poor and the hungry. There are those who preach the gospel around the world, and for one small group of a couple hundred, 500 people to say, well, we have an absolute claim on the tithe. To me, that doesn't make any sense. But I know that's being taught in many churches, but I don't think it is biblical. Okay?
Should you tithe on the net or the gross?
You know, I was with James Baker. We were having a meeting, and he was Secretary of the Treasury. And so that issue came up. And I said, you ought to tithe on the gross. And he said, well, that's what President Reagan says. But some people disagree with him. Well, Reagan was right.
Tithe on the gross. All right. Marie wants to know, in the story of Job, it seems like God is proving something to Satan by letting him persecute Job. Why? God doesn't need to prove anything. Can you explain?
What you have to remember is that they're angels and other creatures that God made. And what we are is Exhibit A before the universe, before principalities and powers, is what the Apostle Paul talked about. So the work that we're doing here is to show to all the universe that there are those who love God. And that's what Jesus, when he died on the cross, he was establishing to principalities and powers that there was a man who lived a perfect life in accordance with the laws of God, and then who died to redeem the rest of mankind. But he redeemed all of the universe. I mean, it's very universal. So God doesn't have to prove anything to himself, but what he wants to do is to let the devil and others know, yes, there are people. And so he said to Satan, that means the adversary, have you considered my servant Job? There's nobody like him. And Satan says, oh yeah, you just watch. I get his money, I get his family, and he'll curse you to his face. Well, he didn't. Job never sinned, because that was what God wanted. And so sometimes those who are Exhibit A go through the worst trials. Jesus Christ went through some pretty tough things. He was Exhibit A for all the universe, principalities and powers. Okay.
If you don't like the book of Job, just read the last page. And you'll like it.
Well, he got redeemed, but you read what he said. He never cursed God. And his wife said, curse God and died. He said, no, I'm not going to do that. You know.
All right. Carol wants to know, how do you determine tithing on a home sale, considering you still owe on the house and you made major improvements on the house, new roof, siding, windows, bathrooms, etc.?
Well, if you're able to add it up, if you keep good records, that's what you're going to pay tax on is the profit. So if you've put improvements in it, then that's part of the basis of the house. And you only owe tax on the spread between what you get and what you put in it, and that's called your net profit. That's what you pay tithes on if you sell the house, not on the whole amount. That's not very smart.
Okay, last question. Viewer writes, I'm a Christian wife, married for 15 years. Up until now, I've not had much libido, to the frustration of my husband. I haven't opened any doors of sin for this to happen, so I don't understand why my body is going through this. I keep pure thoughts, but this is getting unbearable. What can I do to stop this?
Well, maybe you don't want to stop. What she's saying is she's got a whole bunch of libido, and all of a sudden, after 15 years, something's turned the switch. And her husband will be delighted. So tell your husband, talk to your husband, dear, something's happened to me, and I would like us to have marital relations a bit more often.
I can't imagine him being upset with that.
I think he should be very pleased.
We do have one more question.
Go ahead.
Terrence writes, since Adam and Eve sinned, why should all of their offspring suffer? When angels rebelled, only those that disobeyed God were condemned. Not all angels were banished.
Angels don't have sons and daughters. They don't reproduce. They're asexual. If I am prudent and I build up some money, when I die, that money will go to bless my children, maybe. Or it'll bless somebody. All right.
Would you like to adopt me?
You looking for is that much money? Okay. But if at the same token, if I'm dissolute, waste everything, then my children will bear the consequences. That's just the way it is. And we'll be blessed for the third and fourth generation of those that love him. And now what we've learned, interestingly enough, Wendy, is that your life, my life, can actually affect the DNA of our children. So if we live a righteous life and we're happy in our thoughts and we praise and love God, that will affect the DNA. I didn't think it used to. I used to study the Mendelian law that the genetic was fixed. It's not fixed. It changes. And so that goes on to the second and third generation of those that love him. So, I mean, it's in genetics, it's in biology, and it's certainly in money. Good to have you with us. It's such a joy to have Wendy here, and thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you.
Tomorrow, 2 supernatural rescues. Hear eyewitness accounts of angels on the scene of a massive accident. And we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
We were so hungry. I carried my brother to my aunt's house to ask for food, but she didn't let us in. Vaughn was crying so hard because he was starving. I couldn't do anything to help him. There was a time when we didn't have food to eat for 2 days. My stomach hurt a lot. The food here is so good, and we get to eat 3 times a day. Thank you, CBN.
These are the things you make possible when you partner with CBN. Thousands of people around the world begin new lives because you cared enough to give. To those of you who recently pledged to join the 700 Club, thank you. Your help will make a tremendous difference in so many lives. Please be sure to watch for this mailing and remember to send in your pledge, because when we all come together to help, miracles happen.